stories. There is this group of people in Israel known as the sons of the prophets. There's a lot of them. Who do they worship? God, Jehovah. Who do they put their trust in? God, Jehovah, most of the time. So these are, for lack of a better word in our modern times, these are Christians, right? Who put their faith in God. And she now has a problem, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. So evidently they had quite a sizable debt. Anybody else familiar with that concept? Yes. You owed some money, and he passed away. So now that debt falls on who? Her. And how did they do it back then? Well, if you could not pay, they took your family and put them into bondage, unto servitude, in order to pay off the debt. So does she have a problem? Yeah, this is a big problem. Does she have the money to pay? She does not. And if she loses her 2 sons, having also lost her husband, what is she going to do? How is she going to make do? How is she even going to provide for herself? How is she going to get on? And again, she is a woman of faith in God, right? Her husband was a man of faith in God, a son of the prophets, right? Who believed and feared the Lord. So why isn't God taking care of this? So what is her response? I am going to go, and I'm going to go to the man of God. I'm going to go to Elisha and get him to fix it. Right? Verse 2. And what was Elisha's response? And Elisha said unto her, What should I do for you? Now this is important. Now he's going to go on. Don't worry, he's not going to leave it there. It's like, what do you want me to do? Now he's not going to leave it there. But I want you to note something. Who is she putting her faith in? She said, my husband feared the Lord. I have this need. But what hasn't she done? She doesn't ask God. Instead, she is going to who? To Elisha. And this is going to be a theme through this week, next week, and the week after. That we as Christians, those who have faith in God, need to watch who we're putting our trust in to solve our problems. Who are we looking to solve our needs? Are we looking to other Christians? Are we looking to other people? Are we looking to self-help books? Are we looking to ourselves or our friends or our family? Or are we trusting who? God. He says next, though, he just wants to make that point. Why are you coming to me? I am just a man. Yes, I put my faith in God, but so did your husband. So do you. Right? Who could they have gone to? God. Who does Elisha go to? Well, he goes to God and says this. What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And this is, by the way, is an excellent reminder to all of us. As we sit there and say, I have nothing. I don't have what I need, therefore I have nothing. Is that ever true? Is it ever true that we have nothing? No, we have something, right? And can God use anything to meet our needs? So if we have something, that's anything, which means he can do something to meet our needs, right? You follow that? I'm not sure I did. I don't think I can say it again. So, but it's true, isn't it? And so he starts with, what do you have? What has God blessed you with? What do you have in the house? And she said, thine handmaid hath not anything in the house. Oh, except a pot of oil. You notice where her mind, don't pick on her, because who does that? I have absolutely nothing. Oh, except for this. God has not given me anything. Well, except for this. Right? And that's what it says. I've got nothing in the house. I have absolutely nothing in the house. I have no way to pay. Oh, I've got this pot of oil. And is that enough for God to do something? By the way, God who created the universe out of nothing doesn't even need something. But he's going to use, and he's going to say, do you trust God with the little that you have for it to be enough? So he says, verse 3, then Elisha said, go borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. Go and get every pot pan, jug, wash basin, anything that holds liquid, go and borrow them from all your neighbors, not a few. Show some faith, right? Go and borrow them from everybody. And then, verse 4, and when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So you take that one little jug of oil, and you start pouring it into all those vessels. Now, how does physics work? If I have a jug this size, and I pour it into a jug this size, how much have I got? One jug this size and one empty jug that size. That's the way it works. But can God do more than that? A God that can change water to wine. A God that can, tell a storm to stop. A God that can rain down manna from heaven every day to meet our needs. What can God do? And that's where we need to start. When you have a need, ask yourself, well, what can God do about it? What has God given me? What do I have? And what can God use to meet this need? And the answer was that little jug of oil, that nothing she had in the house, right? I'm going to use that. So, what did she do? Did she have faith? Verse 5. So when she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, there is not a vessel more, and the oil stayed. So she just sat there and poured into none, and kept pouring and pouring and pouring until every single vessel they had borrowed was completely full. And then she said, bring me another one because it's still full. God's blessings are overflowing, aren't they? And there's no limit to what he can do. Verse 7, then she came and told the man of God, Elisha, and said, go, sell the oil and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. There was enough oil, not just to pay off the creditors, but also to what? To live on. Is God cheap? Does God give out his blessings in little eye drops? No. My cup runneth over, it says in the 23rd Psalm, right? God will provide if we will just trust him, right? And God is able to provide what is needed. And more. It was more than she needed. It wasn't just enough to pay off the creditors. It was even more than that. And all it took was faith. Not faith in Elisha, not faith in what Elisha could do with the Spirit of God on him, but what could God do? So she should have just gone to him and asked, Lord, what can I do? And what would have God said? Go borrow some pots and start pouring the oil, right? It's not that hard. God didn't make it a big deal, did he? And he made it very easy and fixed the problem. Is God able to do that in our life too? Yeah, he's able. He's able to meet our needs and even far more if we will just go to him and trust him. Let's go to the next situation. Let's go to verse 38 of chapter 4. Don't worry, we'll do that story in between next week. So chapter 4, verse 38. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was a dearth in the land, a famine. They're very familiar with that. And when there's famine in the land, that's not good, is it? There was not food. And the sons of the prophets were sitting before him, and he said unto his servants, set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets. So they were hungry. So what do you do when you're hungry? You eat. You make some food, or go buy some food if you're not inclined, and you go and you get food, right? So that was, I always find this story kind of interesting because I get this picture in my mind of Elisha coming along this situation and seeing a bunch of men sitting around starving to death, never thinking to do what? Let's go cook some food. That's the picture I get. Because Elisha just comes along, and sometimes that's all it takes is a little, what? Common sense, right? There's no great miracle here. Hey, go get some food and cook it. How about that, right? Well, wait. Let's see what happens next. Verse 39. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild gourds his lap full, and came and shred them in the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. That last part's kind of important. So, here they go out, and they go and gather food. Now again, there's a dearth in the land, right? There's not a lot of food around. There's not a lot to choose from. And all of a sudden they see this bush and say, hey, there are a lot of gourds on this thing. His lap was full of them. What were they doing? What do you think they were saying? Yay, God is great, right? God has provided. And blow in there. What did they not think? Should we eat these? By the way, how come nobody else had picked these? Because they were what? Well, they were poisonous. Verse 40. So they poured out for the men to eat, and it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat thereof. Now, once again, we have these sons of the prophets, right? Men of God. Men who feared the Lord. And who is the first person they cry to? Elisha, this is terrible. You've got to fix this. You've got to solve this problem. And the first reaction is to cry. You notice that in both of them are both to cry unto who? The man of God, instead of talking to who? Talking to God. They should have done that before he even made the pottage. They should have asked God before they ate the pottage. And they should have now do what? Now that they have a poisonous pot, what can God do? You ever had those situations in life where it seems like God provided, but it just seems like a huge mess? Seems like you may even be worse off than you were before. This has happened in many times in the Bible. It's kind of like when the Israelites, they were coming out of Egypt, and they ran out of water, and then they see that big old sea of water, and they go down and find out it's what? It's no good to drink, right? And what's your first thought? Oh, God's blown it. God doesn't know what he's doing. I thought God provided. I thought God was on my side. I thought God gives good things. And now I've got something bad. And whine and complain and all the rest instead of what? Lord, I've got a pot here. I can't eat it. What can we do about it? What did Elisha do? Did he panic? Did he whine and complain? Did he say to God, this isn't fair? No. What did he do? Verse 41. And he said, again, every time you see Elisha doing anything, he is simply what? Saying, asking, no crying, no panic, no eccentrics. Here we go. And he said, then bring meal. Just bring me some meal, cornmeal, wheat meal, just bring some meal, barley meal, whatever you got on hand. You got a little meal? Just bring some of that. And he cast it into the pot and said, pour out for the people that they may eat, and there was no harm in the pot. By the way, again, is that how science works? I have a poisonous pot of herbs and gourds, and then I just throw some meal in and all of a sudden it's completely fine. Don't try this at home, okay? Don't go out in your yard and cut up some mushrooms and make yourself a nice mushroom stew, and then if it's poisonous, just throw a little flour in it. Don't do that unless God told you to, right? But did God know they needed something to eat? By the way, did God know that the gourds that they picked up were wrong? But did God also, is he able to fix it? He is able to provide what is good, isn't he? So if in our life we have a problem and we have a need and it seems like what God has provided is not good, who do you need to talk to? Talk to God. Can he make bad good? And in the end, will he always give us good things? Things to our benefit. He's not playing a trick here. He's not testing their faith here. He is simply giving them something to eat. And he can turn anything bad into good if it's what we need, can't he? Again, Water to wine? No problem. Bad to good? No problem. God can do it. He is what? Able. He's able to provide what is good and what is needed at the time. Also, let's go to 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 42. Let's see another instance. And there came a man from Baal Shalisha, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? 20 barley, no, don't think of loaves, think of loaves. Little barley loaves. Think of going down to Outback, right? The little barley loaves, that's what, think of that. About 20 of those, and some corn, still in the husk. That sounds good, doesn't it? That sounds fantastic. What a blessing. And does God bless us this way sometimes, just out of nowhere? Just some blessing will come into our life? But notice something. And he said, give unto the people that they may eat. So Elisha's just like, hey, give it to the people that they may eat. And his servitor said, now again, this should be a man who puts his faith in who? In God, right? He's a servant of Elisha, right? He knows, I don't know, he may have been there at the other instances, right? He should know better than this, but this is what he says. What? Shall I set this before 100 men? What? Are you kidding? If I put this down in front of 100 men and said, eat, they would just devour, they'd fight each other. They devour each other trying to get to this food. No way am I doing that. I'll risk my life. This is not what? Enough. And how many times in our life do we say that? Oh, thank you, God, but this is not enough. What you provided is not enough. It doesn't meet the entire need. You made a mistake, and that's what it comes down to in every one of these. Are you trusting God? Isn't it? Are you trusting that what God has provided is good? What God has provided is enough, right? And he said, I'm not doing it. This is not enough. He said again, give the people that they may eat, for thus saith the Lord, they shall eat and shall leave thereof. Not only will they eat, but there will be plenty left over afterwards. And to his credit, what did the servitor say? Okay. If God says so, then he put it before them. And those 20 little barley loaves and corns with the husks still on them, put them down between 100 men. And there may have been women and children too. 100 men, all ate, all stuffed, and guess what they had left over? Some. Again, he gives what we needed and what? Even more. Verse 44. So he set it before them, and they did eat, and left thereof according to the word of the Lord. So that we need to trust God, that if God says it is enough, if it is what we need, will it be enough? Yeah. Because God can do what? Anything. He is able to do anything. And God is able to provide enough. We cannot trust our eyes. We cannot trust our perception. We cannot trust our ideal of what is enough. God knows what is enough, doesn't he? And God will provide. And he is certainly able to provide. Anybody think of maybe a New Testament story very similar? Yeah, Jesus did the same thing, which is amazing. Because basically, how many think the disciples had heard this story before? Should they have known that that little lunch was enough? Not to mention the second time when it was 4,000, they didn't believe him that time either. They even had more bread that time. And we laugh, but how many times do we sit there and question whether God has given us enough? Whether he has given us what is good? Whether he's able to give us what is needed? And what's the answer every time? Yes. God is able and God does. Always. Doesn't he? Put your trust in him. And then let's go to 2 Kings chapter 6. Chapter 5 we will do in 2 weeks. But in 2 Kings chapter 6 we see another need. And again, we have the sons of the prophets. 2 Kings chapter 6. And the sons of the prophets said unto Elisha, behold now, the place where we dwell with thee is too strait for us. It's too small. Which is a nice problem, right? Wouldn't it be nice if this church was too small for us? Everybody live. All right. Verse 2. Let us go, we pray thee, unto Jordan, and take thence every man a beam, and let us make us a place there where we may dwell. And he answered, Go you. And one said, Be content, I pray thee, and go with thy servants. And he answered, I will go. So they asked Elisha, Can you go with us? Well, Elisha's like, Okay, I'll go with you. Fine. Verse 4. So he went with them, and when they came down to Jordan, they cut down wood. And they were cutting wood to make them a place to live so they can stay there, right? And as one of them was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he what? Cried again. When you see cry, think panicked, right? Because he's sitting there, he's swinging, and he's back swinging, and he goes flying into the water. And we know axe heads, what do they do when they hit water? They sink. They sink. Are you going to be able to find that thing? You go down into the Jordan, diving down, trying to find it in the muck and the mire down in the bottom. They look at it and say, it's gone. His felling beam, and he cried and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. Oh, no. There's no hope here. There's no hope of getting it back. So we don't have an axe to fell more beams, but also what? It was borrowed. I can't give it back to the guy. And by the way, do they have Home Depot back then? Just go down and get another one? No. An axe head was something special, wasn't it? Something you need to go to the blacksmith and get made. And it says, they don't have money to do it. They don't have the ability to do it. I can't replace this. All hope is lost, isn't it? Or is God able to fix things? What is God able to fix? Sometimes things go wrong. Anybody notice that? And it was because he was a bad guy? No. Because he did something wrong? Well, maybe you should have checked the head. But let's face it, if you check it, sometimes bad things happen, don't they? We live in a fallen world. It's going to happen. Bad things happen. But is God able to fix it if we need him to? And Elisha's running around with his hair's on fire. No, he's not. Now, there's no panic with Elisha. And the man of God said, Where fell it? What's the big deal? Where did it go in the water? And he showed him the place. And again, I love physics. And he cut down a stick and cast it in the water, and the iron did swim. So the axe head just came up and attached to the stick. Because that's the way things work. I like to try this sometime. It's like, no, it's impossible, except with God. Is anything impossible? And again, what's Elisha's just like, well, stop crying, stop worrying. Yes, it's borrowed. Why don't we just get it back? Why don't we just ask God and have him get it back? And he threw a stick out there, and it just came up. And then what? Therefore said he, Take it up to thee. And he put out his hand and took it. Matter of factly, isn't it? Can we have that kind of faith? How many of those sons of the prophets and the people around them notice by now that Elisha's a little different? That when everything goes wrong in every one of these situations, what was everybody else doing? Crying, panicking. Somebody fix this. This is impossible. This can't happen. How is this going to be? Everything's horrible. What's going on? What didn't they do? What do you notice about Elisha, first of all? What do you know about him? That's what everybody else is doing. What do you notice about him? Calm. It's like, well, why don't we just ask God to fix it? Why don't we just ask God to provide enough? Why don't we just ask God to make it good? Why don't we just ask God to meet the need? Because when we do that, what do we know? Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, right? We sang about it. We know he cares. We know he's able. We know he will meet our needs. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And Elijah just trusted God. No panic. It's like, let's just fix it. Let's just resolve the problem. Not ourselves, not looking to other people, not looking to a man of God like Elisha to do it, but we can do it, can't we? Was Elisha this calm because he's something special? No, he's just a man. Just a man that until Elijah came up to him was out there just plowing his field, right? He was just doing his job until Elijah came along and said, follow me. But he had the Spirit of God, and we do too, don't we? So what he knows about Elisha? No panic. Just trust God, knowing that God can solve the problem. And all he would do is trust God to do it. What he knows about the other people? No. No peace. Just worry, right? Oh no, it's borrowed. We'll never get it back. What are we going to do now? There's not enough to eat. What are we going to do? Oh, it's poison. What are we going to do? Oh, I don't have money. They're going to take my sons. What are we going to do? Instead of, Lord, you can do anything. I trust you. What's the difference? Faith. Faith being that knowledge that God is able, that God cares, and that God will. Right? He's able, strong enough, he cares enough, and he will. He has promised, right? Is that enough for us? Should it be enough for us? You say, well, that's Old Testament style. That's Old Testament concept. That's not now, is it? Well, yeah. You notice Jesus did these same things, didn't he? When everybody else was panicking, everybody else was worrying, what would Jesus do? Well, just get up and stop the storm. Right? If you think you're going to drown, just get up and stop the storm, oh, ye men of little faith. Not enough food, well, just take the bread and hand it out, and it'll be enough, oh, ye of little faith. You don't have enough wine? Well, just get out some water. It'll be wine, right? Is God able? In fact, what does he say in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7? This is definitely one of those passages every Christian should know, have on the top of their head, because when Satan comes and says worry, when Satan comes and says panic, when Satan comes and says God's not going to do it, God's not able, God won't, you're in a terrible situation, there is no hope, remember this verse. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7. Be careful. Worry about what? Nothing. Don't worry if you have a need. Don't worry if it's not good. Don't worry if you don't think it's enough. Don't worry if you can't fix it yourself. It's okay. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And who is this God? The one true God, creator of all things, created the universe out of nothing. The one that can split the Red Sea, the one that can provide manna from heaven, the one that can bring water out of a rock, the one that can do anything, right? And has proven he will do whatever is necessary to meet the needs of his children, right? And then what do you know? And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. It'll keep your heart from panic. It'll keep your mind from worry, right? From racing and wondering, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? That peace can run over you saying, God will. Because God is what? God is able. And does he care enough to do something? Yes. Will he do something? At the right time, at the right amount, he will work, won't he? Just put your trust in him and be like Elisha. And just simply say, Lord, please, need some help here. I don't see the way forward. I don't see how to fix it. But I know you are able. And then we can move forward in trust and faith in him. And sometimes it may mean borrowing a bunch of pots. Sometimes it may mean handing out some bread, even though you don't think it's enough. It may mean taking that first bite of that pottage when somebody just threw a meal into poison, right? And it may be just waiting out in the water and picking up that axe head that shouldn't be there, right? See, there is something we need to do. But you notice every single time what people were asked to do was very little. Nothing major. Just trust, right? Can we do that? Yeah, we can. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank